So myself and Mr. Bernie Flynn will chair the committee. I'm going to start the parking committee agenda. Call to order, which we just did. Any announcements? Any comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance? Items not on the agenda? Mr. Johnson? Ms. Hammond? Mr. Johnstone? Want to flip a coin?
Good evening. Feels like, excuse me, old times here. I'm Malcolm Johnstone, 217 East Chestnut Street here in the borough of Westchester. My wife and I have decided we're going to relocate to California, and thus we are moving from our abode here, and we need to pack it up into a moving truck. And as you can see, if you walk past our house, there is a long block. It's actually a parking lane, but nobody is allowed to park there. It has no parking there. It's never been a problem for the neighborhood, but we would like to have the moving van be able to park there. When you do cross country, you need the largest truck available, and they need the space. And so we are asking if you would allow the moving truck to park in front of our place, 217 East Chestnut, on October 7th through the 8th. Hopefully they'll be done in one day because of their proximity. But we need to have that for a couple of reasons. One, it's far more efficient and safer to have a moving truck right there. The other one is that we need to be respectful to our neighbors. And if we park that truck anyplace else in that neighborhood, we are displacing 5, 6, or 7 cars in the neighborhood. And I've talked to the very nice folks at the parking department here, and they don't have the authority, of course, to grant something like this. They can get us parking, but it's across the street on Evans and all of that. We could probably make it work, but it would be difficult for both ourselves and the movers. So I'm asking Borough Council to make an exception and to allow us to park that moving truck for those few hours on that particular day. In the 20 years we've lived there, we've never seen anything like that. So it's not a very common thing that happens. It won't set a precedent so far as I can tell. And it would make our move far more pleasant, and we would be far more respectful to our neighbors to have that.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. And you actually, the question I was going to ask is of our parking director, Ramsey Reiner. Is there a precedent for this? Have we done this in the past? I mean, what I've seen is like no parking sign postings, but this is not a parking area.
It's a through street, so I don't know. I've never done this, but I would probably take coordination with public works and police. It's not
No, I don't think so. Oh, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was at Matlack. Yeah, so we're east of Matlack. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're not going to be able to make a decision tonight, obviously, but we will take this away and see, what is possible, because this was not on the agenda tonight. So
Yes.
we will need to do a little research, and I am concerned about setting a precedent, right? And folks putting, large trucks for a couple of days.
I can tell you that on that block, there are 4 units, and those are the only 4 that would be affected by whatever action is taken. Most people actually go back into the driveways because they have smaller trucks, and that's how we moved in, was going in through the back.
Yeah.
And so this is an exceptional thing because we're using a large truck that goes cross country.
I understood, but I thought I heard you say that there's no parking along that
Oh,
strip.
that's correct. Yeah.
Right. So we're
It's clearly posted.
obstructing a throughway in some form or fashion.
I'm going to challenge that in this regard. There is a parking lane there. There are 4 lanes on Chestnut, that area, 2 travel lanes, 2 parking lanes. And the parking ends on the parking lane at Evans Street, and then you cross Matlack and it starts up again with parking. So that one
Okay.
little block does not have parking, but it's still a quote unquote parking lane. There's enough space for that.
Okay. All right, we'll take this away.
Mr. Johnson, what's your address again?
I'm sorry.
Your address?
217 East Chestnut.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you have it's 2 blocks away and, you can go and peruse. Yes. Good deal. Thank you. Yeah. And your parking folks were very polite, very professional. I appreciate that. Yeah, I have no issues with that, but we just have an exceptional thing going on here, so clear that up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh.
Hello.
Hello, Ms. Hammond.
Hi. My name is Alice Hammond. I live at 314 West Gay Street, Westchester, PA. I'm here about parking. I'm here about lot 6. I do not have a car, as you know. I do not drive, so you know I'm here to advocate for my neighbors and my sister. I have a question. I don't expect it to be answered, but my question is, when revising the parking permits for lot 6, Hannum Avenue and Gay Street, was there any homework done about the history of why that lot allowed residents to park in the permit in lot 6? That's my question. I didn't know you were named so high. How are you? That's my question, right? Was there any homework done why residents park there? And I just put here over 20 years ago, this is your history. Homeowners worked very hard to make sure that they had at least 21 slots in the lot 6 when when the borough took control, okay? And the reason for that was because on Tuesday, they have the street cleaners, so we have to move our cars. And on snow routes, they have to move the cars also. There's nowhere to move them because there's only parking and I'm just going for Gay Street now, there's parking on that one side of the street. We live on the corner. We live at 314. The alley, Potter Alley, is right there. So we are not allowed, never have been allowed to park in front of our house, ever. Okay, because when it's not 10 feet from the alley. But where we were allowed to park was in the alley when they used to have meters. So I'm taking you all back before probably most of your times. There were meters when my mother and father used to park there, right? So, but then after they took the meters, they still could park there. Then they stopped them from parking there. So we are even, it's harder for us because we actually are the only ones that cannot park in front of our house. So everybody else parks in front of their house. But the other thing I'm trying to say is there's only 3 original people that own their homes that have been there in those homes for over 70 years. I'm just like, I can't believe that my sister has to go through a lottery to get a ticket, and she might not be the one picked to get a ticket to park in that lot now. There's only there's 30 slots now, when all these other people that are parking there are renters or they're college kids. And what about the 3 people that actually own their homes and have been there for 70 years, even though they're not that old? They won't have a place to park. My neighbors next to me, the Greens, at 316 West Gay Street, he is handicapped. If he has to park any further than right across the street, I don't know how he's going to walk from wherever he has to park to get to his house because he can barely walk. So I just want more consideration done for people, and I'm only going to advocate for my block, for people who have lived in their homes for 70 years, owned their homes for 70 years, not renting them out to anyone else, should have more privileges than people who just come every season or every semester or whenever, and they should not be the ones allowed to get, the parking rights. And the only other thing I want to say is, before the lottery came about, before COVID came about, my sister used to have to come here at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and all the people that owned their homes because this was Hannum Avenue too. But now those people have moved. They used to come here and stay out in the parking lot all that time till the borough opened up so that they could make sure that they would get a ticket to be able to park in that parking lot, which makes no sense. I never understood then. And I have begged her to come and fight for herself, but she won't. So I'm here fighting for her because really it's not fair. It's just not fair. And I think when you do these parking things, just make sure, do the history. I don't care about people who rent. I don't care about people who are college students. I care about people who have been in their homes and owned them for 70 some years. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. And I think I've seen a email exchange on this, Ramsey, haven't I? On lot 6, an email exchange?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, good evening.
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. Since August 23rd, my garages have been blocked by 7 different vehicles. I've called 2700 multiple times. No tickets have been issued. I request a ticket book be issued.
You were very vague. What's been blocked? There's garages or something like that?
My
Where?
garages, yes.
Where?
Sharon Alley.
Oh, the alley. Okay. So your house, your garage is blocked? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
I thought you were talking about parking garages. Thank you.
The evening for items not on the agenda. Hello, your
My name
name?
is Andrew Motel. I own 330 North High Street. I'm an attorney and I have it's in the professional overlay district, so my office is downstairs. I've owned the building since 1995. And when I bought the building, there was no off-street parking. Sometime later, and I don't know if it's Area D, that doesn't seem right to me. I'm on the block between North High Street and Church Street. So Biddle is the street. So I'm on the south side of Biddle. And on the north side of Biddle, the residences applied for and were granted permits for a certain parking area. I think it might be D. I'm not sure. Okay, thank you. I thought it was later in the alphabet. F. Okay. So, and I found out that it was that side of the street, but it wasn't my side of the street. And I had at the time 2 employees. Now I have 1. And I sometimes have other lawyers come in to do a deposition or a court reporter or something like that. So I have the need for a guest passes. So what happens is I applied and I came before your predecessors. It was Holly Brown and Carolyn Comita sitting not in this room though. And that I pulled the minutes from talking about permits for my building, several apartments in there, and some guest passes because I had no other way to accommodate the parking. So Holly Brown and Carolyn Comita said, all right, we'll recommend this to the board if you prepare or create an off-street parking space. Does that seem fair? That's fair. Created that. Seasons came and went. I would never get past it. There would be something written in the book. And I was I'm sorry, 330 North High Street gets permits. So this year we went in, and I don't know if the book has fallen by the wayside, but Ramsey? She recommended that I come to the meeting and address the parking subcommittee about this issue. So what I'm here tonight to ask for is that parking permits be issued. I don't need one. I park in that space, but the people who work for me need one. And then a couple guest passes from my office. I have no other parking spaces other than the one you see there. And that was the arrangement we established in 2006. And that's been honored ever since. So.
So again, I've seen the email exchange. I don't think that this was on the agenda. We won't make a decision, but we will take it under advisement and do a little more research to determine, what the next steps need to be for this property at 330
North High.
North High.
Would you like my number to contact me if you'd like me to come and be on the agenda or make some sort of a formal application?
Yeah, I think Ms. Reiner will be in touch with you.
Okay. Okay.
Mr. Motel, the parking spot that you created, that's off an alley?
Yeah, that's the alley. That's the other point, that Washington Square is directly behind my building. So the parking space comes off the alley. And the people in Washington Square, of course, by ordinance, they have parking. They can't apply for these residential permits. So there's a generous amount of parking, except on the days when the street sweeper comes by, then everybody does the shuffle. But there's a generous amount of parking.
So the face of the building is actually what, on Biddle?
The front
Or
face of
Miami.
my building is 330.
Okay,
The apartments enter, go in and out on the side
okay, thank you.
on Biddle. Okay? All right, thank you. I have a copy of the minutes, or you want that?
Thank you. Any other items not on the agenda? Okay. All right, we're going to move right along. We have the garage management report, and I see we already have it up.
Joe Mallon in Park. It's been a while since I've been here, so nice to see you guys. Going over the financials. So we had a favorable month, $10,900 year to date to budget, and favorable $10,700 compared to prior year, which is good. I'll go into the Bicentennial Garage. So transit was 59,367. And variance of positive $6,367 to budget and $9,204 to prior year. Year to date for Bicentennial for transient was 415,895, positive 26,895, and then versus prior year 13,558. So that's a real good positive trend there. For the monthlies was 36,299. That is down 3,701 to budget and down $1,000 to prior year. Actual year to date for monthly was 291,360. Negative for the variance to the budget was negative 18,640, and prior year negative 9,914. So it seems like monthly still seems to be trending low for the garages. Total was 96,363, positive 2613 to variance over the budget, and positive 8,245 over prior year, with year to date 712,770. Positive 7,770 over the budget, and year-to-date prior year was up 3,366. So positive numbers for the month of August. For Chestnut, it was transit was 46,577. It was $4,577 over budget, and variance to prior year was 1,519. Year to date was 344,566 with a positive variance over budget of 37,566 and a variance over prior year 31,532. So again, very positive numbers for August. For monthlies, monthly was 75,597. That's down 4,403. And variance to prior year was minus 2338. Year to date was 621,135. Variance over budget was 8,865, and a positive variance for the year, 20,518. So that's a great number. Last time I was here, that we were dealing with like negative $80,000 because of Moody's. So that's a good positive trend there. Total year to date was 125,714. Current month variance over budget was 214. Variance over prior year was a minus 661. Year-to-date numbers, though, are still solid with 992,128. Variance over budget was positive 27,128, and variance over prior year 57,748. So very solid numbers for August. Total for both garages for Westchester combined, total 222,077. Current variance versus a budget was 2,827. And then year-to-date is 1,704,898 with a variance of 34,898 and a variance over prior year, 61,000. So that's pretty strong. So positive numbers for that. Any issues or things you want to get with us on? Nothing? Awesome. Great. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, the director's report.
All right. Hi there. Let's see. So the monthly director's report. We have Flowbird is now live in town. It went off pretty well. We have some internal reorganization to do. Public Works has done the PA1 calls for the pads that need to be put in for the kiosks. So we'll be doing that over the next couple of months, but you can see, I mean, people for the most part have been utilizing the app more than the meters, it seems. So we've had good luck with that. And we now have the text to pay, which is available for all on-street parking. We haven't got it set up for the lots yet, but we will get that set up. And that's a nice feature. So that way you don't have to download the app. You can just text Westchester to a number, and then it'll help you pay through there. Chestnut Street lot, which is formerly known as Lot 10. We did send letters to the Cheston House and 44 West Gay representatives regarding the decisions made at last council meetings for the use space. So I think the signs, except for the 3, will come down at Lot 10. So that I'm excited to see if that changes any of the use of the space. And then I did a list of all the Cheston House leases. So we have dates for when those will end. I'm waiting to see the leases for 44 West Gay to find out when those spaces will extinguish. And the last month, and this was a week ago, it's probably more now, 1,274 permits have been issued. Over 1,434 have been reviewed, and there are 3,593 permits active at this time. It was a wild ride. So we did push homeowners out a couple of months so that they could get out of this permit season. And we've been working really hard on getting information on the student rentals and how many parking spaces they have available versus how many permits they're allowed to get, so that we can create it's a pre-approved permit list next year, so that this will be a much easier transaction for all of us. I did go to Westchester University on Sunday for their tenant town hall to kind of talk about the changes that have been made. And then we've got a little bit more, I gave you guys a little brochure on the 10 ways to park in Westchester. We're trying to bump up our communication and work with Westchester University to coordinate on that. And then we will have, just in case anyone's listening, we will have the new homeowners and renters guest passes hopefully tomorrow, and then we can open up the appointments to bring people in to get those as well. So on here, I wrote that Adams Street will be receiving warning tickets to notify them that it's a no parking area, and accompanied by that pamphlet. I did have some questions about that. I received a couple of comments from residents just saying, since no work is being done on the site now, and that will be a loss of parking. Do we want to clear that area yet? I mean, I do know that there are people just actively working on broken down vehicles over there. So we, I wanted to make sure that we were doing the right thing because I don't want to displace people too early if it's not necessary. And I don't know if we have, and Sean, maybe you know, if we have a better ETA on when actual construction will be on that site. And, you know, I just wanted a little bit of input from you guys because I know it's a hot topic.
Yeah, we'd have no visibility into what that timeline looks like.
We have no visibility into what that timeline looks like, except when the developer comes forward to file their plans with the county and record them and execute the developer agreement, the financial security agreement, then we know.
Yeah.
Then we know they mean business because they're going to have to write a lot of big checks to the borough and other entities. And we could react after that moment.
Yeah, my feeling is like, let's make this as least disruptive for residents over there as much as possible. I think,
Right.
you know, we could probably, and I thought maybe we had done this, like just giving them notice that
Yeah.
the parking is going to be changing, but we don't have a date yet. I think, you know, we expected it to be last June. Now we expected it to be when the kids came back to school, and it's still a TBD. So my recommendation would be to postpone that.
Okay. And I'll work with building and housing and Sean so that I have a better understanding, but I put it in here and then thought better of it. So as long as everybody's comfortable with it, if we can just do it closer to when we have some finalization of plans, I think that would be the best transition for the residents and people parking there. And I don't have to keep updating you over and over until it happens. Okay. So we're almost done with the handicapped audit. We do have some signs that have new pink papers on them that are on the signs that we did not have a response for. So we're going to wait until the deadline of that. So at the October meeting, I should have a revised list of all of the handicap signs to go up and come down. But we did have a good response, so that was helpful. And then just to touch base about Lot 6, I know it's not on here, but we did do the lottery this year, which we started last year, mostly to help residents not have to stand in line for, at 4:30 a.m. or sleep in their car here. We have never oversold. And in fact, the ordinance says that we can sell up to 30 parking permits for that lot. But this year we only had 16 applicants and only 14 were eligible. So the use of it has gone down. So I understand the concerns, but I think Public Works painted the lines on the lot this weekend, and they actually did such a good job that they did a few too many. And so they're going to fix it and go back. There's 79 spaces leased to the county. So it will look different. And then I just, when we talk about the budget later, I think there's a lot that we can do with permit planning that will change how the use of that Gay Street area works for those residents too. So I do hear the concerns about the changes, but I also have other changes that I think, will keep their best interests in mind as well. So just wanted to give that update. Okay, revenue. For the month of August, which seems like a year ago, ticket revenue was at 109,925, so a little higher than July. Posting revenue went up because of paving projects and a lot of site work, so that was at 7,542. Lease revenue was 1,710. Meter revenue was up to 157, 192, 33, and I do expect that that'll climb as we have better meters and better opportunities. Permit revenue came in at 16,186. We booted and had $4,630 in booting. And so the total for the month was 297, 185, 33. Questions?
No questions, just on the Lot 6. I'm sure you'll be transparent around, the
Yes.
changes that are coming in.
Yes.
That's your,
Yes,
thanks.
yes.
The handicap, when someone applies for a handicap sign for in front of on their block,
Mhm.
everybody thinks it belongs in front of their house.
Yes.
The handicap sign goes anywhere on the block that I guess that it fits. Because it's not specifically, they don't, person who applies, that's not their handicap sign. Is that correct?
We do tell people that it is not your space, but I mean, they're the ones that applied for it, so they're typically the only ones that utilize it, but no, it does not belong to anyone. I know some municipalities put license plate numbers on the signs. That's not something that we do here.
The second thing is, when someone applies for a placard, a sign,
Mhm.
we all know that a lot of people rent in the borough and their lease, if they have a lease that automatically renews with the landlord,
Mhm.
so they don't have a ending date, how should they proceed with that?
So we've created, there's been a couple of one-off permit applications that we've had. So we've created a few affidavits this year to make it more consistent and standardized. So there's a month-to-month tenant affidavit that a landlord can sign and have notarized on behalf of the tenant. And it'll say that they're staying there in perpetuity until the next tenant comes in. And then what we do is, and this is kind of time consuming, we check open permits against new applicants. So if I find out that if you had a permit, somebody moved into your house, I would disable your permit.
So that instead of doing when they apply online, they have to send in an affidavit as well.
Yeah, and it's just it's the third attachment that they would apply.
All right, thank you very much.
Yep. Okay. Hopefully this is short but sweet. The parking services 2025 budget, it will not be as beautiful as Bill's. Sorry. So the operations this year are a little different. The current staff is comprised of 1 director, 1 assistant to the director, 2 clerks, 6 full-time, and 1 part-time parking enforcement officers that manage all of the daily operations. And that includes our enforcement of permits, violations, meters, et cetera, meter and kiosk collections, postings for construction and events, customer service for resident issues regarding parking ticket disputes and payments, service liaison to the courts for citations and permit questions and service. Which feels very much like a lot of parents calling about student permits. I've talked to a lot of moms this month. The org chart is a little different because we did promote Monica to the assistant position. So that put us with 2 clerks. And we also have our new officer in the part-time night shift, Nathan Kay. And that seems to be helping. It's good for consistency and that, for time off. And he's very, very efficient. So the goals for 2025, I know we've made a lot of capital improvements this year with the kiosks and wayfinding signage and all of that. So the goals for 2025, I'd like to continue to focus on wayfinding and enhancements to bring people to downtown and increase the meter revenue as opposed to punitive revenue. I don't ever want to, Sean and I talked about this. We don't want our ticket revenue to go up. We do want people to just have an easier time paying. I would like to work on updating and enhancing the lot signage, paving, and possible stormwater improvements. I know beautification was a hot topic this year, and I agree that that's something we should look at working on next year. My biggest goal for our department for next year is to work with the parking committee and the residents to almost overhaul the permit system to make it take a more thoughtful approach to it, especially keeping in mind the land development that's coming in. I think there's some changes that are going to need to be made. And I think we have some funny little pockets that could, like I said, about lot 6, it would help with street sweeping and all of that. So that's really what I'd like to do for 2025. And the goal for parking is to provide customer service and enforcement. But, we want this to work for everyone. Were you going to say something? Okay. The projected revenue for 2025, this is different than 2024 in that because we're going out for the RFP with the garages, we're trying to change the way that money will work through the garages. So the goal is that all of the revenues for the garages will come directly to the borough, and then we will disperse the monthly management fee that includes their payroll expenses. That way we can have a really clear report and control over any improvements, any emergencies, all the supply ordering. And we have it's more of a turnkey operation. So in that we did, I made the revenue higher for parking garage revenue because that encompasses what I think we are making minus all of the things that we've spent without our control this year. So parking ticket revenue, we're going to keep at 1,150,000. Ordinance violations, we're going to bump up $1,000. My other goal is to work on the constable fees. We need to work a little more closely with the courts. I think we don't really ever balance this line item well. We get the money in and then we pay out for warrants served. And I think that there's some coordination that we need to be doing. So I think that we'll keep it at 50 next year, but we'll end up doing a little bit better on recouping some of those expenses. Parking meter revenue, we've bumped up to $1,950,000. Parking permits will stay the same. The parking garage revenue this year is $1,664,000. I've bumped it up to $2,500,000. So cross your fingers. And then the parking lot leases we have set at $90,530. And between now and the next meeting, I will confirm that that's proper. But that with the lot 10 changing, the number will change a little bit. But we will recoup that in the higher market rate this year with the county and the church. And then Will asked to move the solar EV charging revenue to this budget. So that was not in there last year. It's in here at $8,500. Salary expenses, I didn't make any major changes. It's all just contracted increases. I did bump up the overtime a bit, just taking into consideration what Brian said tonight. And the overtime, I think if we have an opportunity for special events to have some officers here so that we can maybe charge special event fees in the lots during those times. So that would have overtime. And we have a lot of senior officers who have a lot of time off. So that's to cover that. Otherwise, no major changes to staffing. The operating expenses, I did bump up some of the supplies and parking garage maintenance to cover the modification of the garage management contract. There is an increase in the operating expenses here to show the increase in the garage management and payroll, since that'll be the hopefully all-in-one number. This is an estimate based on what we've been paying Reef in Park. But I did bump it up a little bit knowing that this might be a new company. And then we did increase the professional services line item to fund a feasibility study of the parking garages to determine a future capital plan. We really want to make sure that over the next few years, we're investing in these structures to make sure that they're safe and enhanced and we're doing it in a proper way. Then proposed 2025 capital projects. We have been discussing expanding the garage EV charging stations at Chestnut Street Garage and possibly in the lots. Like to put 100,000 in for lot paving and improvements. Payment technology, we've got 27 kiosks on Westchester University campus. Some are a little bit older than others, so we just want to make sure that we're keeping the money to replace and update them as needed. And then if we do our project downtown, if everybody thinks there's a missing kiosk, we have some funding available to put one in. Enforcement technology, this is just to replace and update any handhelds or any of the capital items that the enforcement officers utilize. And that is most of my budget. That is the major changes.
The
So-
good news is here is, pardon me for interrupting. Lisa. This is my favorite department to talk budget because I never have to worry about revenue meeting expenditures. If you look at the expenditures and revenue that we're looking at, we are still $200,000 to the plus side right now. We are unbalanced, but we're unbalanced to the good side. I'm not going to have the same story to tell next week about the general fund, which is typical for this time of year. So don't worry about that. So there's another thing Ramsey didn't mention that I want to mention is we're moving the Westchester Business Improvement District allocation to the parking fund because we see a more reasonable connection between the special events management, the parking director function, the parking management function, and our overall downtown business functioning. And it also takes a little bit of a pressure off the general fund. So something that organizationally and some conversations Ramsey and I are going to have, some goals we're going to set between she and I for next year is to increase that coordination and dialogue between the borough and the business improvement district and what we can continue to do to support that. So that's something else I wanted to bring to your attention.
Yes, sorry, I forgot that one.
That makes sense, right? We're always having conversations around the bid wants to do a special event and parking and where that, and I also like your idea around actual having special event parking in the lots
Right.
other than just the garage, right? That we
Yeah.
lean on the Chestnut Street garage a lot.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
that
think
you'll be really happy next year if we do that, Sean.
that-
I just had a couple of questions,
Sure.
Ramsey,
Yeah.
on the budget and just need you to help me understand. So I'm going to go backwards because that's how it is in front of me. So the enforcement technology, I see it's 36,000 for next year, but the following years you've got 3,000. Is there an initial investment that we need to make?
No, I think I didn't put too much thought into next year yet. This is just, we have a lot of aging handhelds. The batteries are lasting 4 hours maximum. And I think that might be part of it, but I don't, the 3,000 for next year might not, it might be higher.
Okay. And then is that the same for the payment technology where that seems,
The payment technology, I think with knowing that we might need a few more kiosks in town for the cross streets, it'll be a higher number in 2025. And then I think we'll have a clear replacement plan. But it seems like a lot of them were purchased at the same time. I think they were purchased in maybe 3 phases. So I just want to make sure that I think we can upgrade the newest versions. So it won't be a bigger number.
okay. Then on the operating expenses, and this is all preliminary, so I understand that, we still need to massage the numbers a little bit. But the capital investment for 2025 versus 2024, it's about half. And I was just wondering what that is related to. On line
Oh,
9.
right. This year we had a lot of big projects. We have the garage membrane, we have the wayfinding, we have the kiosk replacement. So it was a much higher number. I think, like I said, I think 2025 will be more planning. I think 2026 might have higher capital improvements once we have a feasibility study for the garages and we understand if we need to replace anything there. But I think that's the cost difference. And some of those items in 2024 were also carryovers from 2023 or 2020 even. The
20.
wayfinding bid, that was older.
Okay. And then online, I'm sorry, it's hard to see. 9, although they all look like 9s now. The parking, garage management and payroll, that's the change that you were referencing?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And I wish I had a more finite number for that, but I'm basing that off of the payroll estimates and the garage management fee with a increase.
Okay. I think that was it for my questions. I'm looking at revenue now. Mr. Flynn, I don't know if you had questions.
Thank you, Ms. Dorsey. The couple different things I want to ask you about.
Sure.
Weekend coverage, we talked about overtime. How are we staffed for employees driving the neighborhoods on Saturdays and Sundays?
So parking department on Saturdays comes in from 4 PM till midnight. We have 2 officers on Saturday night and there's no one on Sundays. We don't enforce on Sundays.
And Saturday night, where do they basically spend their time? In the business district or in the neighborhoods?
So the new officer, his assignment is for the majority of the time to do the Gay Street area. He rarely even drives because he just circles that area to do the downtown area and the lots. And then the second officer is supposed to check residential, but, or alleys, alleys is one that keeps coming up, but there's not a lot of residential parking on Saturday nights. So they'll spend a lot of time in town and in lots.
Yeah, most of the abuse after quiet time, which is August till May,
Right.
most of the abuse is on Saturdays during the day.
Yeah.
In the residential areas because they know no one's coming around. And they're parking in front of fire hydrants, they're parking close to the corners, they're parking on people's parking pads.
Yeah.
So just FYI, maybe we should staff
Sure.
Saturdays, just one person driving around, spot checking, high residential areas where, people were already
Right.
there.
I will say, coming in from Labor Weekend, there are a few police officers that just, they're out there. They gave us 2 huge stacks of tickets because we have to input them. So there are some police officers that are really good at that also, but I'm open to that as well. And I do think that if we discuss the parking permit areas next year, that maybe, I know, like the South Adams, South Penn Street, they really talk about weekends being a problem over there, and maybe permits are required on weekends there, and that's an option also.
All right, the facility management maintenance.
Mhm.
You mentioned you were interested in paving a few lots. What lots do you think you have in mind?
Well, that would ultimately be your decision. I would say that lot 10 is often discussed as needing to be beautified, and that would be probably a good starting point. Lot 7 also, I know Will and Sean and I have discussed stormwater opportunities to see if there's grant funding available. I'd also like to coordinate with Public Works. So if Chestnut Street's being paved, then should we be paving the lot right next to it? So we want to make smart mobilization decisions, but I would love to do lot 10 because
Okay. And we would sub that out to a regular paving, scarifying and paving contractor? Good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, the Responsible Contractor Act will work there.
yes.
The Chestnut Street Garage, this is an observation.
Mhm.
The ground floor of Chestnut Street Garage is starting to spall. You're getting white. If you drive by and look, you'll see like white calcium rundowns,
Mhm.
and you'll see spider cracks from the ground up that whole brown section.
Okay.
I know we'd have to put it out for an RFP and all that stuff,
Mhm.
but it'd be good to put a set of eyes on the Chestnut Street Garage, because we don't need the foundation
Sure.
to start having issues and when we're worried about, the other parts.
Mm.
You can see where there's spider cracking everywhere and spalling. And we should catch it now while we can. And it's probably, as a guess, maybe about a $400,000 project, because you have to go from the ground up and you got to address all the issues. I did look at the caulking. The caulking is staying pretty stable,
Okay.
but we have to check the caulking. But the Chestnut Street Garage is very important because that'd be the
Yeah.
third one in my time living in the borough if we had to replace it. And,
Okay.
just doing general maintenance on the ground up.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Can I make one comment? Lisa's question about the enforcement technology, and I haven't spoke to Ramsey about this, but the 36,000, that sounds about right. Those parking handhelds are very expensive between the handheld and the licensing. Not a week goes by that a parking officer doesn't come into our office for they're not working, it's not printing, it's not connecting, and it's an ongoing issue. And I don't believe they actually have enough for the amount of officers they have. I think the part-timers are sharing.
We share
Yeah,
with
so they
buildings.
actually need more and actually need to have a spare. And they are very expensive, but much like a police officer without a parking handheld, you don't have much of a parking officer. They need that tool. So I hadn't seen the number before, but it makes sense to me to get those up to where they need to be. Just I just want to comment on Lisa's comment.
Thanks, Bill. That's helpful.
Thanks.
Ms. Dorsey, one more question. And you won't know the answer to this because I don't know the answer to it. But this goes to Mr. Edwards and Mr. Metrick and Mr. Anderson. Because of the construction that's on the corner of Gay and Walnut, there's a lot of vibrations going on in that. I don't mean by music either.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of vibration is going on in that corner. And some of these cracks could be caused by the vibrations of the jackhammers and the big stuff going on that corner.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the cracks just don't show up because they want to show up.
Sure.
So Mr. Edwards maybe want to put an engineer's eye on that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Ms. Ryan, before we move on?
No,
Okay.
thank you.
Moving on to old business and a motion to approve the August 2024 Parking Committee meeting minutes.
Easy, good.
Thanks.
Approved 2-0. And then new business?
Yes, so we put out the bid for the garage membrane sealant project. We had a number in our capital budget of, I think it was 180,000, and that was based on an estimate from 3 years ago. Hudak. Hudak. So we did get the bids back. We had Quinn Construction came in at 195,371, which was over what we expected, but reasonable. And then Premier Building Restoration was at 387,944. Marv Waterproofing was at 440,000. The concern was after looking at the price gap between the three different bidders that they made, the first one, the lowest bidder made an incorrect assumption about how this would be managed, and there were phases involved that weren't specified in the bid specs. So the recommendation is that we reject all of the bids because they weren't we can't compare them all, and to rebid it and make adjustments to the bid specs that specify the phasing of it. I think we all agree that it'll still end up being higher than the number that we had in the budget. It was also, the budget number was based on, it was an ad alternate of a project that was currently taking place. So I think the mobilization of it from that bidder was, it made it a lot lower. So we should have ramped up our number a little bit.
Contractor that did the Chestnut Street Garage, did they bid this project?
I think
No.
but did they do that as the, oh no, not this one, but is that where we got the
We
number?
resurfaced the top floor to stop the water leaking. And I didn't know whether that contractor applied.
I'm not sure because I don't know who it was, but Sean says no.
We accommodate that difference in 2025, the difference in the,
Yeah. If we bid it and it's much higher, then we can carry it over and use money for 2025.
any other questions, comments?
Are you both okay with rejecting that bid?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other business?
Not me.
Just something I want to bring to the committee's attention, and we'll talk a little bit about in smart growth. We're going to be talking a little bit about a kind of a unique situation that's been popping up that Ramsey's had to manage with issuing parking permits to renter occupied homes. And the way we have our ordinance written, if the occupant is not the owner, then they need to present a lease from the landlord and a bunch of other things demonstrating that they in fact do live there and that they have their license and registration on that address, correct? Ramsey?
Yes, yes.
So one thing's been popping up lately where owners are buying a home in the borough and then allowing, without a formal renter agreement, allowing usually relatives to live in the house. And that's not really a lease agreement under our code. And so it's been this gray area that we want council's input on how to address. We don't need to make a decision on this tonight. But what I advised Ramsey to do would be to go ahead and issue the parking permits, because as a resident who lives there, entitlement to parking permits is one issue. The second issue is, do we treat those kinds of arrangements just like any other rental and then require them to get their rental license and be inspected? Or do we treat them differently because it's in fact a familiar relationship or a friend relationship, and we just don't want government to be in that relationship? And I think that's a policy choice that council should make. And I just want to preface that right now with you all, that it's this gray area that's causing a little bit of, well, what do we do for staff? So we'll bring it up again next month with you all, and we'll also bring it up in Smart Growth. But maybe if you have any initial thoughts or questions, I'd be really interested to hear.
The first question that comes to mind for me is, are these long-term leases, or is this, a relative for a long weekend, a long week, or, are these
It's
essential?
not short-term occupancy.
They're not? Okay.
Now, to get a permit, if you're not a student, your license and registration must match the property you're applying for. And I have family members, that lease from parents, or not lease, but rent from their parents. But the question kept coming up also because there is a concern that's like parents are now buying houses for students. And I think if we do some sort of waiver, it should say that this is not going to be a student rental, because once it's a regular rental, they get their guest passes, and then these kids share them with their friends, or they move boyfriends, girlfriends in, and that's.
I was very careful to avoid the third rail noun that got mentioned in this room, students. We have a very effective way of regulating students. Student homes, regardless of whether they're owned by students, I know that's rare, or rented by students, are treated the same way. We have really ironclad ways to reference and regulate student homes as they're defined. And we have ironclad ways to issue permits in a unique way to student homes. I'm not worried at all about student home in the context of parking permits or zoning regulations. I'm just concerned about owners allowing people to live in their house, but not through a formal rental agreement. Do we call those rental licenses and make them get a permit or not?
That's a catch-22. I think, you realize I'm retired, so I'll come up with an idea driving to Chicago during the week. It's,
I think for the
you
rent,
could actually turn it into a student rental without us knowing it's not a student rental, because if my father buys the house, mother buys the house, and I live in it, who's saying I can't have 10 people live in the house with me that are going to
If two unrelated full-time students live in a house, that's a student home. And if they're not allowed to do that under the zoning ordinance, that's a zoning violation. It's real black and
Okay,
white.
so if that's
No
black and
problem.
white, then the people are coming in for the permits, then you got another problem because of blended families. Not all families have the same last name. Yeah, so you got blended families, so it's
so for homeowner permits, if you two live together and Bernie's on the lease or on the deed and Lisa's not, when you guys get married.
Good is
and-
not a good example. Try another
Well, let's just
scenario.
say, so, so.
I'm not getting in another dunk tank, just so you know that. And I'm not showing you my knees again.
In this situation, if you are not on the deed, but Bernie is, or vice versa, we created an unlisted resident affidavit because we also have parents that are applying for their kids, and it says it's signed and notarized by the property owner saying this person lives here with me while they're not on the deed. For a situation like Sean's talking about, I think what we should do is put them in they would get a renter permit. They wouldn't provide a lease, but they would have an affidavit from the property owner saying that this is a familial, we could create an affidavit for them saying this is a familial or this is a non-leased property. And that way we have some documentation because it isn't owner occupied. Or we could make another permit for that just to track it because it is nice to know those numbers. And then we have a, non-owner, non-rental permit. I mean, we have like 1,000 permits, so.
An affidavit's a legal binding document, right? So if somebody doesn't tell the truth on that document, and we find out,
Mhm.
then that people can't live there, correct?
Right. We can make it say whatever. Ours just say we're going to deactivate your permits and you won't have them anymore if we find out that this is fraudulent.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's a plan.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, anything else? Mr. Metrick, you done? Okay, meeting adjourned at 7:05.
Thank you.